Welcome to Hail Varsity Radio, the voice of Husker Nation. Insight, opinion, expertise, with the biggest and best names talking Nebraska across the state. Join the show on Twitter at HVarsity Radio. Call in at 402-489-1240 or at 800-825-5865. Here's Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Thanks for hanging out. It's a Wednesday edition. It's Hail Varsity Radio. We're presented by Currency. For all your equipment financing needs, go Currency. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, where you're listening to us. You may need snowshoes or just to be real careful as Snowmageddon hits a lot of the state. Be careful, be safe. And we'll try and keep you entertained through the next couple of hours. Can join us today on Hail Varsity Radio. Numbers to get in, it's shifted. That phone number is 402, always the 402 area code, 489-1240, 402-489-1240, where you can hear us across the state, 1-800-825-5865. You want to watch the show? Go for it. Can stream us and watch the show on the Hail Varsity YouTube channel and also the Hail Varsity Twitter handle at HVarsity Radio. Submit your comments that way as well on 3 different platforms for KFOR. KFOR Twitter at KFOR Radio, and then KFOR Radio and KFOR Sports. 2 Facebook pages for you. Just to double your fun. On the program here in 20 minutes, we'll jump in with Mike Babcock from Hail Varsity. It is not golf weather, but we are all dreaming of warmer temperatures. We'll have Mike Schuhart from Wilderness Ridge on. Then Evan Bland going to be with us in 1 hour. His takeaway with Husker Baseball thus far. And we'll recap a busy day with Nebraska football, as we got to hear from the strength and conditioning coach, Coach Cooper, Coach Dvorak, the linebackers coach, and Coach Donnie Raiola met the media. We'll get some of their comments coming up. A Jock Doc with Dr. Brandon Seifert as we wind down a Wednesday. You can email the show, Chris at hailvarsity.com. So, listen, really, and I want you to read this, because he's incredible at what he does. But the latest issue of Hail Varsity Magazine has got another just bang-up column by Brandon Vogel called Nothing But Everything, okay? It's, I don't want to freak Vogues out, but it's kind of where the centerfold would be, okay? It's just in the middle of the magazine. Great column by Vogues, and we'll talk to him tomorrow. But it really hits on a lot of different topics. I'm going to ask you the question. Where does winning start? Where does winning start for your favorite team, your favorite program, whatever your sport is? I mean, and it's a fun discussion point. And right now for Nebraska football, winning starts, well, it started with winter conditioning. Okay? Winning starts with winter conditioning and taking what you have. What's come in from the portal, what hasn't left for the portal yet, and it's a new regime. It's a new leader. It's a new coaching staff. It's new players. It's a new system and scheme. And winning starts right now with guys getting or staying in shape or getting rehabbed and getting accustomed to one another, right? Talent's huge. Talent doesn't win by itself. Scheme's incredible. Chip Kelly's fantastic. He had some dudes. Goes to the talent discussion point. But those guys, and pick your favorite Husker team, they have chemistry. That chemistry is born and developed through that shared suck, as Jay Moore would tell us, right now in winter conditioning. But many points hit on by Vogues in his column. And, you know, where does winning start? You have talent, you have coaching, you have scheme. And it starts with organization, and it also starts with the winter conditioning. Fascinated to dive into some thoughts from Coach Cooper today as Nebraska is at it. We'll hear from Coach Raiola in a little bit, and we'll get there first with strength and conditioning. how it's changed, right, Elijah? Nebraska used to be the leader in it during the Epley years. Nebraska was the gold standard of strength and conditioning, in nutrition, and flexibility, and Husker power, and being explosive. And I mean, they had it all rolling, man. It was their advantage. They had behemoths on the line of scrimmage. They had more behemoths waiting to get in and stomp on you when they were already up by 28 points. And they had more guys working in the weight room to get their chance to stomp on you, whether they're down or not in a contest. They also had television. They were on TV 3 to 4 times a year. Most teams got one. Okay, now everybody's on TV. The new advantage is going to be this monster facility and NIL. Okay, so Nebraska's going to have the newest, shiniest toy, and they're going to have all sorts of fan base contributions, right? Your chance to go play at Nebraska, get a great education, play for a good coach, and a really talented athletic director. But, oh, yeah, you can get some gravy for doing so, and it's all legal. But strength and conditioning, that is going to separate you in the fourth quarter if you do it right. Here's Coach Cooper.
Some of the technological advances that have been made, even when, from when I was a player, and that was about 10 years ago now. I finished up at the University of Georgia in 2013. The advances that have been made in this field have been great. Right back when I was a player, we didn't have in our weight room devices that could track, bar velocity. They may have been out there, but we didn't utilize them. Right, the Catapult GPS was just being introduced into the United States. So we didn't have the ability to track, player loads and velocities that we have now. So with those technological advances, utilizing that to our advantage to understand where to take the training, that's been huge. The things that have stayed the same, at the end of the day, 45 pounds is 45 pounds, right? You got to pick up a barbell and you got to train. I'm a firm believer that there's no substitute for strength and no excuse for the lack of it. So from that standpoint, we're going to get on the barbell and we're going to train. It takes work to achieve the goals that you set for yourself and want to achieve. So that's the same, but the way in which you approach it as a result of the technology that we have today, that approach may be a little bit different.
So that's a bit of an answer to our question, where does winning start? Winning starts with work, right? And that is a good answer from Coach Cooper. Let's get his take on his first impression, right? He's been able to eyeball all the kids out there playing in the snow. I'm air quoting playing, working hard in the snow last weekend, but coming in for winter conditioning.
Oh, the guys have responded well. The one thing I will say about them, when I walked in the door at the end of November, they were eager to work. And that's something that I value. Their willingness to be coached. That's been huge. So my initial impression of them was very well, and they received me very well. Anything I asked those guys to do from an attention to detail and effort standpoint, they've done. So I'm proud of them with respect to that.
And let's talk about the mentality needed to be part of Nebraska football under Matt Rule, under Coach Cooper.
I think the mentality from an offseason standpoint is to get 1% better every day, right? And understand what the goal is, but what it takes on a daily basis to achieve that. Again, attention to detail, effort are huge pillars of what we look to accomplish in the weight room. And also the mindset of hard work, right? Winter programs across college football, a lot of people are doing the same things, right? What's going to set you apart from those other programs across the country? It's not what we're asking you to do from a day-to-day standpoint that's required. It's what are you willing to do extra? So I think those three things are things that we look to foster during winter training.
That is Coach Cooper, strength and conditioning.
Coach Campbell.
I said Cooper?
Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
I was doing that last week, too. I had to put like 3 different quarters in the storage jar. That
absolutely slaps the old credibility in the face.
I know. I was doing it last week, too. You know what the problem is?
I'm sorry.
It's because his name is Corey Campbell. There's Evan Cooper on staff. You combine the two and you get Corey Cooper.
Name tags.
Well, you get Corey Cooper, former Husker safety. That's the problem. Corey Cooper is a name that we've been saying for years. I believe he graduated back in, 2013 or 2014?
He's safety for 2013.
Exactly, yeah. that name is so ingrained in our heads that you hear Corey and there's already a Cooper on staff and you immediately go
he was
there.
out of Chicago. I'm sorry.
I'm telling you, that's been the problem. I made the same mistake last week, and I apologize to the listeners then. We're apologizing to the listeners
We're
again.
We're going to take a phone call, and we're going to take this public flogging right now. All right, 489-1240. Coach Campbell, I trust me, I follow the program. I apologize, 1,000 apologies. We'll have Mike Babcock on here in about 10 minutes, get his take on how things are going for Nebraska. But, yeah, Coach Campbell laying out what this is when it comes to their mindset, where they're going to work. And, how can Nebraska be different and better than the next guy? Nebraska can be different and better than the next guy, the next team. We laid out the facilities, the NIL, the fan base, but really what has been different about Nebraska when they've been elite has been their leadership. And it's been their talent, but that leadership has brought in the talent. It's used a system, and they were better at it than anybody else. And they quite frankly had willpower. They had more willpower than most teams. They didn't always out-talent teams. And if Nebraska went 10-2, the two they lost were probably a nail-biter to Oklahoma and a tough draw in a bowl game. And there you go, on probably the opponent's home field in January. So that's where Nebraska has been different for years during the great years. How they've been similar to other programs that have been scuffling is, quite frankly, bad choices. It's been bad hires or lack of patience with certain hires, and you've hit this repeated cycle of reset. And Tennessee kind of looks to be crawling out of it now with Heupel. At least they love him now. Okay, Florida State looks to be out of this vicious cycle. Is Miami finally? Is Texas finally? I don't know. I don't know if Sark is long for this world or not. A&M's kind of gone through it. Okay, LSU's on a third or fourth coach, but it's a really good coach, and Coach Kelly, take the personality part out of it. Notre Dame's kind of been stabilized when they hired Kelly after their merry-go-round. I mean, that's it. Can you finally hit on the right one? And you look at programs that have been successful in the West. Minnesota, after they made the mistake of getting rid of Glenn Mason, went and got Brewster. He's a salesman. But then they went and got Kill, and then they got Fleck. Two good hires. Iowa's sat it and rode out with Ferentz, and they've been really, really successful. Penn State killed it. Absolutely killed it back-to-back after that disgusting display of leadership with Joe Paterno. They go get Bill O'Brien, and then they get James Franklin. Wow. Killed it. Ohio State, sweater vest, and then you go get Urban. All right? And then it's been okay after Urban.
Ryan Day hasn't wrecked the Ferrari.
No. I mean, he may need to wash it a little bit, but he keeps getting first-round quarterbacks. And then really Wisconsin's stabilized a bit. So can you just be good with your hire and where you want to take the program? I mean, that's where it's been a problem, and Nebraska's on to another coach, and this guy seems to get it. And what's refreshing about his approach is he gets the job, at least right now, right? Just he's not scared of the weight or expectations of the job, and his approach at it is similar to what he's done with Temple and Baylor. Nebraska has a program stature and brand is giant. Baylor's been a better program the last 10 years than Nebraska. I never thought I'd say that in my life, but they are. But the approach is going to be the same. And again, how do you win? Where does winning start? It starts with work. And that work being done right now in winter conditioning.
Mm-hmm. Well, what's the best way I want to phrase this? I liked what he had to say about work is not about what the coaches direct you to do. That is what is expected of you. There's extra work that's needed, because that reminds me of those Pelini years. That was the mentality that those guys tried to instill. Whenever you listen to Amir Abdullah talk about his time at Nebraska, and you compare that with what his teammates had to say about him too, it was all the same story. Is on Friday nights, Amir Abdullah did not go hang out with his friends. No. Amir Abdullah came down to the stadium on Friday nights.
Friends were the weight room.
He got an extra lift on Friday nights, and he went and sat alone in the film room by himself, breaking down film for hours and hours and hours on Friday night. He was getting that extra work in. That's what set those Bo Pelini teams apart from the Mike Riley teams, the Scott Frost teams, the Callahan teams, whatever you want to put in there. They instilled that mentality of the work is not done whenever the coaching staff is done with you. You are going to continue working by yourself. You need to be the hardest working team in America if you want to find success around here. That was the mentality that was instilled. So I liked what he had to say about, yes, winning starts with work, but winning does not start with the work that the coaches are assigning to you. Winning starts with what you are doing extra beyond what the coaches are telling you in order to give yourself not only a leg up on your teammates to go win that starting job, but a leg up on the rest of the conference.
Well, it's that expectation and standard, right? It's going to be the standard that Rule sets and sets in concrete, and then that's what you need to achieve. We'll get some thoughts from Mike Babcock, his impression of Coach Campbell. Heard from Coach Raiola, the offensive line, always a fascinating topic. Hail Varsity with you on a Wednesday, and we're presented by Currency.
And now,
back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Thanks for spending time. It's Hail Varsity Radio. We're presented by Currency. You can find us on KFOR Twitter, Facebook, and KFOR Sports' Facebook, the Hail Varsity Twitter handle at HVarsity Radio. Follow that. And as always, the Hail Varsity YouTube. Can check out all the interviews from the coaches session today with Coach Campbell, Coach Dvoracek, and of course, Coach Raiola. We welcome in historian, author, Hall of Famer, Mr. Husker Football, Mike Babcock, with us at MD Babs on Twitter. Babbers, how much ice you have on your driveway, bud?
A lot of ice. I almost turned around and came home when I was heading down to the baseball availability. It was so bad. So I don't handle ice very well.
Really? See, North Lincoln
not
was
at all.
North Lincoln. Whenever I was leaving for here today, I had no issues.
Well, I need to move north apparently because it was a little glazy, too glazy for me. Babbers, we'll get into football in a minute. What are some takeaways with Coach Bolt after a tough weekend? What did Will have to say?
Well, I think, the obvious thing is that there's a lot of baseball games to be played, and you can't set what's going to happen based on what happened the first weekend. He felt like there were some obvious positives in the last couple of games offensively, and that was probably the big takeaway from the weekend. If you look at it, the way Nebraska played offensively, and again, particularly in those last two games, you feel like you're going to win a couple of games in that situation. But when your pitching staff walks 20 and hits 10 and gives up that many free passes, you're probably going to have some issues. And Nebraska did. And that was one of the things that he mentioned, that he didn't think that the pitchers competed. The really pitchers in particular didn't compete the way they should have. That's something that you can overcome. And, I still think that there's reason for optimism regardless of what happened there because of that. I expected more out of the pitching staff because last year I felt like the pitching held up pretty well, and they've got some guys back from that. It's going to be the same starting rotation at South Alabama. So we'll see how they rebound from that standpoint. But you look at it again, it's just you can't give away those free passes the way Nebraska did. And on top of that, Nebraska, the pitching staff walked 20. Nebraska drew 18 walks, almost as many walks, and Nebraska had almost as many guys hit by pitches, 8. So it had that going for it. And Nebraska hit over 300 for the series. So there are takeaways that you can look at and say, well, here's a reason for optimism. And again, 4 games in, it's difficult to say what that necessarily going to affect what happens after.
Well, Mike, when you look back at opening weekend, I think the starting pitching was good enough to win you some baseball games this year. I think those guys are going to start going deeper into games as the year goes on and their arms get ready for the rigors of a season. I think the hitting did well enough to win you some games. It was really that bullpen that caused you issues, and you kind of hit on the reasons why, but were you surprised with that performance, just with the kind of experience Nebraska has in their bullpen this year? You have some former starters in the bullpen, Shea Shannon and Kyle Perry, guys that have pitched a lot of baseball games for Nebraska in the bullpen, yet those are the guys that struggled the most, it felt like, this weekend. So were you surprised by that? I've been told by people that know baseball a hell of a lot more than me that making the switch from a starting pitcher to the bullpen is a lot harder than it would seem, but were you surprised that those guys were the guys that really let the team down this weekend?
Yeah, I was surprised that those guys were for the reasons that you mentioned. But I think that there is probably some transition from starting pitcher to bullpen that I don't understand. That maybe you're seeing there that maybe that they weren't as focused as they needed to be on what immediately had to happen, because when you're a starting pitcher, there's a little bit of a bigger picture that you're looking at. As a reliever, you have to be very focused on that one batter. You might only face one batter. Who knows what the situation is? And that was the thing that surprised me, that the relief pitching was not what I thought it was going to be. And you're right. They did get some good starts out of it. I think all three of the starters won at least 5 innings. And for a first weekend, I think that's, you feel like you've accomplished what you need to accomplish with those guys, but then the relief pitching kind of let them down, I think.
Mike Babcock is with us from HailVarsity.com and magazine at MDBabs on Twitter is where you follow Mike. Mike, going to go to football now, and some media availability today as Coach Campbell available, strength and conditioning, a chance to meet and greet. Of course, Dvoracek, the linebackers coach, and Coach Raiola. The feel with the two position coaches, Babbers, is they're still sorting things out. Raiola excited to be back and excited to give those guys a second voice. What did you take away from Coach Raiola specifically? My main takeaway is they're still kind of looking to find their best 5 even before they get to the pads point here this spring.
Well, I thought it was interesting that he talked about how all of the offensive linemen are going to be tried at, see some time at center, some tackle, some guard, whatever, moving guys around. And I don't think Coach Raiola is real enamored with talking to the media, for one thing. There were some short answers that he provided there. But, the thing about it is now he's in his second year, so he has some experience with the guys that are coming back, plus the fact that I think that they feel pretty good about the guys that they're bringing in. So it's just how do those guys mesh, and where are they going to fit when it comes time to play in the fall? And I think that's going to be an important spring for things to shake out. A guy like Turner Corcoran, is he going to be a guard? Is he going to be a tackle? Where are things going to shake out? Even though he might be able to play other positions, where is his focus going to be? We're probably going to find that out at the end of the spring. And that seemed to be the message that we were getting from Coach Raiola was, this is what we're going to find out in the spring, where these guys fit.
Well, you've seen Turner on each outside spot at tackle. You've seen him at guard. He even was mentioned at center today. I mean, to your point, they're going to look at everybody. You've got options. Presumably, it's going to be Scott's job to lose at center, but that's not even in pencil yet.
I hear there's some real good tight ends that have some great prospects at center this year, Schmitty.
He's in Philly. He's in Philly. Piper's, a guy that he mentioned as well. I mean, I don't care who they find, but if I'm a Nebraska fan, find me 7 or 8 that can do it.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing. And when you look at center, I think when you come out of the spring, you're probably going to have a pretty good idea of who that center is going to be. And center is not a position where you're going to shuffle guys in and out. I mean, that's it. Pretty much unless there's an injury or something, whoever emerges as the starting center is the center. But with tackle and guard, you've got to have guys that you can take in there, I think, guys that have experience when things matter, and that can play either side as a backup. Ideally, I guess you'd have 4 guards and 4 tackles, but I think at least at minimum 3 guards, 3 tackles. And you'll probably find that by the end of the spring. You hope that you will, although you got a guy like Prohaska that's he's hurt and is going to be limited in the spring. He's not going to, I don't even know if he's going to be able to practice. Still recovering. So there's going to be situations like that. But I think they'll have an idea of how they want to line up and who are going to be the top backups by the end of spring. And you got to have some of those guys. When you say top backups, it's a guy that you can put in there that has had experience when it matters. You just don't wait till you hopefully get a big lead and then you put them in. You put them in when the game is in doubt.
Mike, one of the things we talked about yesterday on the show was the fact that we're unsure how much we're going to learn about this offensive line in the spring, because a lot of times whenever it's a new coaching staff coming in, that defense is going to be ahead of the offense, and by the time you get to the spring game, you're going to be letting that offense run some things in order to get some experience going full speed against a defense where the defense is going to be kind of base. We're not going to learn all that much. But do you think the offensive line gets a leg up in that sense because they're the only position group that has a returning position coach this year, with Don Varela coming back for his second season? He already has some notion of what he has in that room.
Yeah, well, that's a little bit of an advantage, I think. And you look at the defense now, in this case, you're looking at a different defensive system, which I thought it was interesting. The response to the question, what kind of defense? Chaos. I thought that was a good answer. But defense is going to be learning a new system as well. So maybe the offensive line will have a little bit of an opportunity to be a little bit ahead of where it would have been had those guys been in the same defense and were coming back to the same order, which they're not.
Mike Babcock is with us. Babbers, before we get out of here, how about the run Fred and Nebraska's been on? What's been most enjoyable for you as you look at this win streak? And Babbers is going Han Solo here for us.
Well, I'm probably like everyone.
Oh, there we go. We got you. We had him. All right, 3, 2, 1, Babbers. You're up, bud.
There?
We got you now.
And he's gone.
He was going to say...
He was just about to say something, and his screen goes black, and he's gone.
And Babbers is going to be like, that was going to be so incredibly important. It was going to be profound on the air.
It's rare whenever the video doesn't crap out on us, but the audio does. That doesn't happen very much whenever we're bringing people on with the stream. You can see Mike. You can see the wheels turn. You can see him about to prepare an answer, and then boom, the screen goes dark.
Right now, Babbers is the kindest, best guy ever. And right now, he probably reached into his second desk drawer where there's a hammer. And he's gonna swing away. Babbers was gonna say, I'm gonna just say, it just went out. He just texted me. It just went out. We're just gonna put words in Babbers' mouth. I think he's enjoying Kisei Tominaga.
Oh, 100%.
I think Babbers is probably rocking a Kisei jersey, and he's hoping that Golden State gives Tominaga a jersey.
Or just draft him.
That's what I mean.
Okay.
That's what I meant.
I thought you meant like gift him a Steph Curry jersey.
No, I'm saying get him a jersey. Yeehaw. Okay, we'll talk a little golf. Mike Schuhart's on the way.
And now,
back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you, it's Hail Varsity. We're presented by Currency. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. We'll check in with Mike Schuhart in a bit. But loved Babber's perspective. We'll get some more thoughts on Husker baseball and Big Red football next hour. Evan Bland with the Omaha World Herald. How about Carter Nelson? Tight end from Ainsworth. Last week it was Roll Tide, Nick Saban in Alabama, offering the talented ball player. Notre Dame's been through. Nebraska's been out there. High priority for the Big Red. Well, it got even more thick for competition. Georgia, an offer just 2 hours ago to Carter Nelson. Miami, the U. They've printed tight ends. Incredible tight ends. Purdue has had a good run of tight ends. That's just today. Yesterday, A&M, Illinois, Texas, Ole Miss. Wow. Of course, Iowa's in on him. It's going to be every monster Power 5. I believe LSU's there as well. And Carter Nelson, such a dynamic talent. He's that body type that is somebody that can get loose, can flex out in the slot. His frame allows you to put some weight on. But he's got that speed and athleticism that is just gifted. And then you factor in the basketball skills. He's a wow prospect. And if you're a Nebraska fan, you hope it's an eventual get. But, man, it is absolutely anything but a sure thing because of all these squads that are going after him. And, man, I think some small-town Nebraska kids, or maybe not metro is the best way to put it. I mean, I look at a number of the schools that came after Andrew Rodriguez. Mm-hmm. A-Rod is one name that kind of comes to my mind. I look at some of the schools that were after Harburg, right? I mean, some other Power 5 squads. And, of course, you look at some of the Metro kids. Malachi Coleman had a monster offer list. You have Noah Fant, a big-time offer list.
I mean, go back even further. That
Amon Green had a big offer list.
I think it was that Millard West team with Harrison Phillips went off to Stanford, and the quarterback of that Millard West team also went off somewhere. Then Creighton Prep a couple years ago, they had a couple guys go to North Dakota State who won national championships there in North Dakota State. So the who's who of college football, and I'm not sure North Dakota State's the who's who, but they are at least in Division I AA. They're the who's who. They come to Nebraska.
They would have won the Big Ten West a few years.
That was Easton Stick was the quarterback from Creighton Prep that went up there and did really well, even made a little bit of an NFL career out of it as well.
No, I look at Carter Nelson here, and be sure to follow along with Brady Oltmans from Hail Varsity. He's done a tremendous job on all the recruiting updates, but also has had some really nice features and has some great connections in Ainsworth. So, if you're Nebraska, I mean, Rule absolutely hammers it home with just the fact that let's develop a relationship, let's be genuine, let's make sure fit is a two-way street. Yeah, you're a great player. It makes no sense for us to not want to go after you, but we gotta connect. And Nebraska's doing their due diligence. But if you're a kid from, I don't care if you're from Lincoln, if you're from Omaha, if you're from a smaller community, pick a spot in Nebraska. If you're from a rural community, that's pretty cool things with the who's who of the SEC or your two-time defending national champion that puts tight ends into the NFL coming after you. You just wonder what that tug is like for an in-state kid still to come to Nebraska.
I mean, what's that tug like in a place like Ainsworth? It's hours from Lincoln.
Mm-hmm.
You're closer to Boulder, Colorado than you are to Lincoln. What's that connection like with University of Nebraska?
I'm sure Coach Prime will just send a tweet out there, hey, any tight ends, call me.
Any tight ends from Ainsworth, Nebraska?
Any tight ends from Ainsworth.
We got a spot for you.
Give me a shout. Prime ain't picking up the phone. You're picking up the phone for Prime. That game sold out already for Colorado State, Colorado.
That's sold out?
That is sold out.
The one that they play in Denver?
I think.
I know they did that for years. I think they still do it.
That was kind of discontinued in Donkeyland because of the tear gas bowl. Do you remember that? Of course, you weren't born yet. My cousin used to go to Colorado. He spent a lot of semesters there. Awesome, fun time to go visit him there in Boulder. And he got hit over the head by a CSU student. Mm-hmm. It was like a half bottle of Jack Daniels. He ended up missing the game because of stitches. I mean, it got really heated between those two in-state rivals. But at least he was taking ibuprofen and probably some Coors, because that game they had to shoot tear gas into the stands. This is like 20 plus years ago, because it got so heated. I mean, they had to deploy canisters in the late 90s for that rivalry. So it's not been in Donkeyland. It's not been in Denver for a long, long time. Really? It's either been home and home.
It was that was back when it was called Sports Authority Field. I don't even know what the Broncos Stadium is called anymore.
I don't either. I miss the old Mile High, and I miss the old Red Lion Inn, where some of us could crawl to and from that parking lot to the old stadium.
Oh, everyone in Denver misses the old stadium as well. So I'll just call it Mile High. I know it was in Mile High as of a couple years ago. So I'm not sure if it still is there. It was there at least pre-COVID. Back like 2018, 2019, they still played it there. I'm surprised, though, that Nebraska game isn't the first one that gets sold out for Colorado this year.
Nebraska odds are out.
Are they?
Yes. And early line is out for Nebraska, and they are a 7-point favorite, which, hey, you'll take. But, yeah, the Buffs are opening up this year as an underdog, 17.5 points to TCU, and they're already a touchdown dog to Nebraska for the Coach Prime home opener. So that is going to make Colorado fans sick. So theoretically, they could start out 0-2, a loss to TCU, a loss to Nebraska. That would be really cool if you're a Big Red fan. And then you've got Colorado State, and then you travel to Oregon, you host USC, and then you're down to Arizona State. So Dion could open up Ofer. And the reason I broach that Ofer topic is because he's got one heck of a job to flip this roster. He's brought in a ton of talent.
He's got some juice behind that program right now. More juice than Colorado's had in a long, long time.
He does, but can they all fit and can they all play?
And what happens to that juice if you start the year 0-5?
Oh, I mean, Colorado's all front-loaded with where they're going to be seen, and they're going to ride that Coach Prime train for a bit.
Well, with that contract, they have to.
No, but I'm saying they'll get some good TV, some juicy TV spots early on until they're over. I mean, if they're over, if they don't beat Colorado State, or if they get annihilated by Oregon, they'll jump off the Prime train after USC. We'll wind down hour one at Hail Varsity, presented by Currency.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
One final time this first hour, it's Hail Varsity Radio. If you're just finding us or you're looking for us, 1240 a.m. in Lincoln locally, 1015 FM, Lincoln locally, 590 in Omaha on ESPN Omaha, and then Kearney, Hastings, Grand Island, 1460, 1550. And 92.7, 92.1 on the FM. And then News Talk 900 in Columbus. Ways to get in touch with us. Can also check out the stream, the Hail Varsity YouTube channel, and then the social media platforms, the KFOR Facebook and Twitter, and KFOR Sports Facebook, the Hail Varsity Radio Twitter handle. Give that a follow at HVarsity Radio. You can find me, Chris Schmidt, at Schmidt_radio. Or Elijah Herbel at Herbal Essence. That's where you go.
And I did some furious Googling during the break.
Steve, I think on Twitter, says it's Invesco.
It's not.
No,
it's not.
Changed?
Invesco went under a couple years ago. It is now, and I knew this as soon as I Googled it. I went, oh, duh, of course. I watched enough Broncos games this year that I should have known this. Empower Field at Mile High. What is Empower? I have no idea what company that is.
So it's Empower, it was Invesco, and before Invesco, it was what?
It was Invesco, And that was, I believe, what the stadium began as whenever it switched from Mile High. So it became Invesco Field at Mile High.
But it was some sort of like Sports Authority,
and then it was
right?
Sports Authority. So Invesco went under, and they went to Sports Authority Field at Mile High. Sports Authority then goes under. And I believe there was one in between Sports Authority and Empower.
So I remember
they just keep on picking losing businesses.
Well, and like the Astros kicked this thing off. It was because Enron Field, right? The old Enron debacle. Listen, if I'm going to sell naming rights, I got to get it up front. I need 80% up front. Oh, you don't like the dollar amount? Too bad. Or putting your business on the side of a stadium.
Well, my favorite soccer team, Tottenham Hotspur. They built a new stadium about 2.5 years ago, and they still have been unable to secure naming rights for the stadium. And part of the reason people think they're doing that is that they want to build the Tottenham Hotspur. Oh, it's Tottenham Hotspur Stadium now, so whenever NFL games are played there, people are going to go, oh, Tottenham Hotspur, a soccer team, let's go follow them. But I just think it's because that they're bad at business and they don't know how to sell the naming rights, because there's been like 6 different businesses that have apparently been close and they've never been able to seal the deal.
I've been told, and I was talking with my cousin Nader. Nader's big-time soccer fan, and the business model for a lot of your pro soccer across the pond, especially your premier, it's only like $40 for great seats.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's super affordable.
Oh yeah, like there was this big fiasco where like the best seats in the stadium for it was the FA Cup final, I believe, a very big match. We're going for £85, so like $100, and people were freaking out saying, "Oh, they're pricing the average fan out of football." And I went, "Wow, you guys are lucky." You guys are lucky. That brings up an interesting point, though.
$85? That's a dream.
Brings up an interesting point, though, just with like naming rights and whatnot. Do you think Nebraska would ever consider naming rights for Memorial Stadium if it were to help the football team?
Sure, absolutely.
Would they go naming rights and say, hey, this goes to the athletes, this goes to the NIL collective, and that now gets to go back to the university?
Everything's on the table.
But Hy-Vee Stadium at Memorial, Hy-Vee Field at Memorial Stadium. Right now it's Tom Osborne.
No, you're not gonna punt the redhead, dude. You're never gonna get rid of the field. No, you can name. Let's call it Cabela's Memorial Stadium, Tom Osborne Field.
Memorial Stadium at 1 Cabela's Drive?
It's already Championship Drive. You can't change that.
You can change that.
No, you can't.
You can get sponsorship.
They keep not getting a conference title, you can change it.
Sure.
Reminder to get buckled up, especially when it's icy out, hands on the wheel, eyes and mind straight ahead. The driver has one job, to drive. A message from the Nebraska Department of Highway Safety Office.
Welcome to Hail Varsity Radio, the voice of Husker Nation. Insight, opinion, expertise, with the biggest and best names talking Nebraska across the state. Join the show on Twitter at HVarsityRadio. Call in at 402-489-1240 or at 800-825-5865. Here's Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Into Hour 2, it's Hail Varsity Radio. We're presented by Currency for all your equipment financing needs. Go Currency. We'll get to some of the stream comments in a little bit as we'll get things kicked off. Still comments from Coach Raiola and Coach Dvoracek here to come as they met the media today. Schmidt and Elijah Herbel, thanks for spending time. You can find us on Facebook and Twitter, the KFOR Facebook and Twitter, the Hail Varsity Radio Twitter handle at HVarsity Radio, and the Hail Varsity YouTube channel. Just find Hail Varsity. Evan Bland with us from the Omaha World Herald. He'll kick off Hour 2, and Evan Bland, OWH, on Twitter. Evan, how we doing? Are you able to navigate through this, this glazed Wednesday evening? Thanks for the time.
Yeah, that's about right. Need the ice skates to move along the road here, I think, tonight. So it's a little bit slow going, but hanging in.
Good. Thanks for your time, and get a start with football. We'll get to some baseball in a moment, but let's start with the offensive line and the work that's going in here in winter conditioning, and right now the assessment that's ongoing. And at least this is one spot, Evan, where Nebraska has some familiarity, not just with personnel, but with the same coach in Raiola, as he's able to kind of see where guys are at, and then confer with his new partners on offense. They're still searching for the best 5.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. And it's sort of refreshing, actually, to be able to talk a little bit about last season, a little bit about some of the personnel, because to this point, and, through no fault of anybody's really, but a lot of the coaches just have not been equipped to talk about the guys on their roster because they're still learning names and abilities and things. So it was kind of fun to hear from Donovan Raiola, really, I believe, for the first time since fall camp last year. So to hear him, put out an assessment that he felt like the offensive line got better week to week, I thought was notable. And yeah, I mean, as he pieces together what this offensive line could look like, with Teddy Prohaska still out this spring, what does that look like at left tackle? I mean, he threw out a name like Bryce Benhart, who's been on the right side, or Turner Corcoran could move back out there. It may have been coach speak, maybe not, but just this idea that Ben Scott, the Arizona State transfer, isn't necessarily earmarked for that center spot. I still think he'll probably end up there, but just this notion that competition's wide open, that they expect to see some progression and improvement from a lot of these guys who've been in the program for a number of years now, was interesting too. And so, we've heard from Matt Rule, we've heard from Marcus Satterfield, guys like that who have been enamored with Donovan Raiola and the way that he teaches the offensive line and how he goes about his business. And, I think what we heard from Raiola today generally is in line with what we've heard from him in the past. A lot of shorter answers, but I think at times, too, just this mentality of toughness and what he wants this line to be. So year two is always easier than year one, especially at a position where cohesiveness and sort of working in concert is especially key, and he's going to get that chance here moving forward.
If you were to get asked by Raiola, where do you think Turner's best fit is? We've seen him everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, he mentioned he could even play some center.
Yeah.
Obviously, we've seen him at left tackle. We've seen him at the guard spot. I'm no talent scout, but what I've heard and what I've seen, I would say, you look at what he would project to be at the next level. I'd put him at guard, personally. I mean, that's a spot, too, where Nebraska's kind of struggled to find a lot of continuity and push through the middle of that line in recent years. And you look at, you think back to Turner Corcoran. I mean, he was a 4-star kid getting offers from all over the country. So the potential's there, the pedigree's there. He's in that back half of his career now where you would hope that potential turns more into production. But he's a versatile kid, not afraid to work. You talk to him, he's the guy who wears the run the damn ball hat, so he's bought into what the culture is. But I would imagine interior ideally would be the spot. But again, it's especially when you're a little light on scholarship numbers, the way Nebraska still is, those guys who are versatile across the line are especially valuable.
Yeah, and with Turner, you mentioned the run the damn ball. I think that fits better for an interior offensive lineman, especially whenever you look at what he's put on film in recent years, and he has at times looked a little bit lost out in space with that tackle position going up against some really high-level edge rushers in the Big Ten, guys that have the speed advantage on him. At times, he's just looked a little bit mismatched out there on the edge, and I think interior offensive line might be the fit for him, but there's also a bit of a logjam along the interior offensive line as well, Evan. When you look at Nuri coming back off of suspension for a year, Ben Scott gets added into the mix. You had Ethan Piper, who's got really 2 years of starting experience. I know he's been kind of thrown into the starting lineup and then removed from it in times over the past couple seasons, but there's somewhat of a logjam there if Turner does end up making the full-time switch into guard.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I think that's what the spring is going to be all about, is trying to find the best five, and we've heard Raiola say that before. But you think, I mean, they have other options at tackle now, too, and 3 years ago or 2 years ago, they pretty much needed to put Turner Corcoran out there. You think about that end of the 2020 season when he got his first start against Rutgers. That was out of necessity because of injuries, and now there's a situation or a scenario where you could put Benhart out on the edge. You don't know what Jacob Hood, the Georgia transfer coming in, maybe can bring to the equation. Teddy Prohaska out this spring, but somebody that you feel really strongly about long-term being a solution out there too. So, I recall Corcoran saying in previous interviews too, it's really not that big of a jump for him to move from the inside to outside. I know it sort of varies player to player on what that transition's like, but he's always sort of expressed that it doesn't really matter where he lands up. It's more of a mentality for him. And, I think you're going to see that at a lot of positions this spring where coaches with fresh eyes are going to evaluate players. And certainly the offensive line's a really interesting one because these players have been cross-trained. And now you bring in a guy like Matt Rule, who is well-versed, especially in the trenches on that offensive side. It'll be really fascinating to see where he projects Corcoran and a lot of his mates along the line here moving forward.
Evan, do you think the cross-trainings, and I don't know the amount of cross-training they've done other than that it's been done, and you've had guys flip-flop spots, but has that taken away from some development of the here and now? I mean, has that hurt this group as a whole because they've struggled? They're getting better. I like what Coach Raiola said, and he was right. They got better as the year went on, but they had 6 different starting 5 rotations. You've not had Teddy for either season. Turner's had to play a bunch of different spots. You missed Nuri a year ago. Benhart's been in and out of the lineup. Is this just as simple, the talent's there, the continuity's got to kind of rise to the top, or do you think some of the cross-trainings hurt development at one spot?
Well, I mean, I don't get the sense that what Nebraska's done cross-training is unusual in college football. I think that's pretty common, and typically over the course of a player's career at that position, they sort of gravitate to wherever they might project at the next level.
Sure.
I mean, I think about Ben Scott, for example. He was one of the reasons he transferred from Arizona State was because he believes that he projects to be a center in the NFL, and he was playing tackle at different times out there and didn't feel like he was being used well. So, I think that's part of it. Ideally, right, like you would be able to specialize in one spot and then sort of fill in elsewhere as needed. But, it's been a rough go for Nebraska, whether it's through just, misses in recruiting to injuries to ineffectiveness, whatever it might be. Mm-hmm. They just haven't had the luxury of rolling out the same 5 guys and allowing them to build that rapport. It just hasn't happened. And so, if you're trying to cover your bases, you better be sure you have enough guys who are equipped to play wherever a need may rise. And so I think, Nebraska's been in survival mode a little bit just because of all the transitions and things in flux over the years, that it's been hard to build up that continuity. And now maybe, with the priority of bringing more bodies into the room, Rule has said they want 16 scholarship offensive linemen in that room, and I think it's, 13 or 14 right now. That's going to be a major point of emphasis building up. They're going to continue to cross-train. But, hopefully for Nebraska's sake, again, they have the luxury to build some depth behind them and to be able to specialize a little bit too.
Evan Bland is with us here from the Omaha World Herald. It's Hail Varsity Radio. And Evan, let's switch gears here. Talk Carter Nelson. He's picked up just a laundry list of offers over the past couple days. Bama, Georgia, Texas, Miami, as of an hour ago, has reached out and sent an offer to Carter Nelson. So Nebraska is again going to be in for a dogfight for the top in-state recruit yet again. Where do you think Carter Nelson ranks on this Husker big board as it stands right now? I think Dylan Raiola is at the top, but Carter Nelson can't be far behind.
Right. Yeah, he's probably number 2, I would think at this point. And what a story, right? I mean, an 8-man player from Ainsworth, Nebraska, getting the kind of attention that he is from the defending champs, Miami, like you mentioned, Alabama, and a whole host of other schools. I think in one breath, it's just a reminder of how national recruiting has become. I mean, a guy like that 10 or 15 years ago is not getting that kind of attention, but through technology, Huddle, social media, different things like that, these schools are recruiting everywhere, and they can find a player anywhere. And I don't know if you guys have ever been to Ainsworth, Nebraska, but I have, and it is out there. You don't go to Ainsworth accidentally. I mean, you got to try to get there. And so for him to get that attention is a testament, I think, to where recruiting's going, but it's also a testament to Carter Nelson himself and what he's been able to do, the measurables that he has. An 8-man player, generally speaking, does not get the benefit of the doubt when it comes to recruiting tape and things like that. So whether that's makeup, physical ability, versatility, that's a guy who's got it all, who's going to have all the big dogs after him. You would have to think that the in-state school would have an inside track there to Carter Nelson's services down the stretch, but I think it's a reminder, too, for Nebraska and Nebraska fans that, 20 years ago, if you offer an in-state kid, you're feeling pretty good that guy's coming. And now the reality is you have to put in the effort to recruit those guys just as much as you would a player from out of state or a long way away. And I think luckily for Nebraska, Matt Rule's already put in some effort there. So it's going to be a fight. I still would think that Nebraska's got as good a chance as anybody, but it's going to be a fun process to watch play out. Okay, so you've been to Ainsworth, Evan. Did you stop at the cafe? Did you have a slice of pie, or did you have some? Did you have a chicken fried steak? Tell me the food layout. Oh my gosh, it's been a while. So I interned at a paper up in Norfolk way back in the day, 2008, and I was on an assignment out there. Drove way out there for a day. Food wise, man, I don't remember. I remember they had a cool golf course, the sprawling hills. It's big sky, all that stuff. It's a cool place to visit. But, man, I'd love to be a fly on the wall to see some of these major college football head coaches coming into Ainsworth to check out the scene. We're going to do a road show out there one of these days and see if we can just. We'll get a round of 18 in. Yes. Well, then we'll go sit outside the high school and see what coaches we can see going into Ainsworth High. Well, notable people from Ainsworth. You've got, of course, Carter Nelson, number one. Nelson, and then you have Marvel Ray, a silent films actress. Huh. So today I learned. There's two. Today I learned. What did you learn from Will Bolt before we go, Evan? Well, I learned that it's interesting, and when your team struggles out of the gate, you have to sort of discern how much stock do you put in those struggles versus what you saw from season. So I think, on the offensive side, they're pretty confident in what they can be, and I from what I saw, I would think that this is going to be a lineup that's going to be stronger. Certainly last year, Dylan Carey came out of the gates hot. Charlie Fisher looks really strong. They have a number of other players who they feel good about. The pitching side will be interesting, especially in the bullpen, where they were within a run one way or the other in every game late last weekend, and they found a way to lose them all, whether through balks or walks or ill-timed hits or things like that. So it's a team that, especially in the bullpen, I think that was challenged by their coaches to be more aggressive, to be more competitive, throw strikes, trust your pitches, trust your conviction. So I imagine we'll probably see a little bit of some role shuffling this weekend. Who do you bring in a high leverage situation late after what you just saw in San Diego? Like, I don't know that there are a lot of names based on what we just saw that you feel good about. So they're, I think, looking for a bounce back in the bullpen. They still believe they're a good team. But after what you saw the first weekend, again, I think you need to start seeing those results in a game that they've been able to see behind the scenes now for many months. Evan, 15 seconds. What kind of baseball program is South Alabama? Well, we'll see. I mean, they've had their share of major leaguers over the year. Juan Pierre, Adam Lind from back in the day. I don't know how good they are this year. They got walked 20 times in a game last weekend, so their numbers look pretty good. It tends to be a fairly traditional program, so we'll see how it goes. Evan Bland with us from the World Herald at Evan Bland, OWH. Find him on Twitter. Read him with Omaha.com. Evan, good to get caught up, man. Thanks for squeezing us in today. Thanks, guys. All right, take care. There he is, Evan Bland. Ainsworth. We just got to do a summer show tour. Oh, go around the state. We'll hit all 92 counties. Done. All right. That'd be tough. We just got to get some Venmo here for gas money.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Good stuff from Evan Bland. You want to get the podcast? We invite you to check it out. Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, each segment or just the whole show. And you can watch the show, the Hail Varsity YouTube channel, Hail Varsity Radio, Twitter at HVarsity Radio, and KFOR Facebook and Twitter. 489-1240, 489-1240 numbers to get in. You can also dial up 800-825-5865. Some comments from the stream we'll get in here in a bit. Sal checks in, wants to know feelings about Dylan Raiola canceling his Georgia visit. What's this mean? Go Big Red. Well, I know Georgia's kind of looking at a couple of quarterbacks, and you're under the gun if you're one of the top quarterbacks in the country to make your declaration here probably before May.
And I think
or for sure April.
Yeah, and that's a factor here, but it could also be political. I don't have any inside knowledge. I say that a lot in this show. I don't have any inside knowledge here. I do love reading the tea leaves. I think I'm decent at it. Recruiting can be political in a sense. There's a new offensive coordinator in Georgia. Well, you told the old offensive coordinator and the head coach that I'm going to come out and take a visit. You didn't talk to this new offensive coordinator. You don't have the same relationship built up.
Because the OC is off to Baltimore.
So you cancel that recruiting visit and say, hey, I want to build up a relationship with you before I go lock myself in an official visit here. Do you want to make me a priority or not? You're the new offensive coordinator here. It's up to you. I'm going to cancel my visit and wait for you to be the person that comes and builds this relationship with me, because I have USC, where I had a great visit 2 weeks ago. They're building a relationship with me. Nebraska sent the entire staff down here to come visit me during the recruiting period this year, and I'm going to go up and take a visit with them. It's a new offensive coordinator in Georgia, and it sounds like family friend of the Riolas, Matt Stafford, has a pretty high opinion of Coach Bobo down at Georgia, because he was Stafford's quarterback's coach at Georgia. Stafford apparently has a very high opinion of him. That could sway the Raiola family here and Dylan Raiola here, knowing that Matt Stafford says, hey, I think you're going to do great with Coach Mike Bobo down there. But I think it could just be about, you know what, letting this new offense coordinator know, you don't have to come recruit me if you don't want to. I'm going to cancel this visit. Don't feel the pressure. If you want to come recruit me, if you want to come build a visit with me or come build a relationship with me, come and do so, and we can talk about rescheduling that visit.
Here's what the Raiolas have as the top quarterback in the country. They have the talent, they have the resources, they have the family interest, but above all, they have got a great BS meter. Think about the situation he's in. And to your point about Bobo, his time at Georgia, the Stafford-Raiola relationship in Detroit for years. Mm-hmm. I mean, listen, Stafford's a family friend. He's going to shoot dad and kids straight about this dude as the OC. He's probably getting parked in Athens, and he's going to make a phone call. I mean, it's not that Georgia's out of this. By any means. And in fact, this may not be great news if you're Nebraska. They've already won a couple of national championships. They already have a killer offensive and defensive line. They already have studs at running back, tight end, and wide receiver there. Okay. They've got it rolling. They're killing it. Kirby Smart's locked in. But this offensive coordinator and his connection with the Raiola family, that's better than it was.
Well, it could be. It could be.
It could be, based on the family relationship. Mm-hmm. Lincoln Riley's singing sweet tunes right now because of the Heismans and how much fun the offense has been, and whether the quarterbacks have produced in the NFL or not. He's put 2 number 1 draft picks into the NFL. Mm-hmm. So there's that aspect. But, Nebraska's going to stay in the race, Sal, just because of Donnie and the work Nebraska will put in to develop this relationship. I can't read Dominic's mind, but it's clear that Nebraska will have every opportunity, and you have the familia advantage. That's it. Now,
the family advantage, and I've mentioned a couple times in this show, from all accounts, Dylan grew up a Husker fan. Dylan grew up wanting to be a Husker. I think if all things were even, if Nebraska was running the same type of program as Georgia and USC right now, I think Dylan Raiola would already be a Husker. And I don't think that's a stretch to say, but you have to look at the history of Nebraska as well and the history of what is being put out at USC and at Georgia. If you have confidence that Matt Rhule is going to get this thing turned around, and you think I have the same opportunity at Nebraska as I do at USC and I think Georgia, I think Nebraska will be the pick, but that's the question that he has to sift through his mind right now, because there's a proven track record at USC. You know what Lincoln Riley did at Oklahoma, and he already showed in year 1 at USC. He's going to continue that with the Trojans.
And I'll say this. If I'm a Nebraska fan, I know that, damn it, I'm going to have to score 50 points to win at USC in any bowl game based on the way the defenses have been playing at USC, right? I mean, that's still a thing. USC is still giving up 40 to anybody that's big and tough and physical named Utah, all right? And Dylan's got to decide what he wants to be. He's already super talented. Does he want to be a guy that keeps it rolling at a Georgia, the next great at Georgia, or the next great at USC? Or is he going to be a guy like a Tommy Frazier or Turner Gill, another great versus the next great, but another great that flips the program? Because generational quarterbacks do that. That's big pressure. That's big ask. But that's the conversations we're having about number one quarterback in the country, a 5-star commit. They're supposed to do that or put you in position with the rest of the recruiting haul they bring.
Well, it goes back to our original conversation we started the show off with. Where does winning start? Well, maybe it starts with going and luring the number one player in the country to your program. That might not be a wrong answer. Now, I don't necessarily think
it's got to mesh up with what you're doing in winter conditioning.
I don't think there necessarily are any wrong answers to that conversation.
There's a lot of right answers to this conversation.
Because I look at it, and the first place my mind goes is competition. That's where winning starts. Competition not only in your own locker room, but who are you going to be playing next season? If you're UCF, remember that magical UCF 2017 season, Scott Frost's final year there, if they go and win the Sugar Bowl. If you put that UCF team in the SEC, do you think they go run the table?
No. They beat, I'll say this, they beat the team that beat the two teams playing for the national championship. Auburn that year went 8-5.
Yeah.
But they beat Georgia and they beat Alabama.
Does UCF go beat Georgia and Alabama that year, though? Probably not. And that's what I'm saying with competition from the outside. Like, you can have a great football team, but you can go play the top 12 teams in the country back to back to back to back, and you might go 0-12. So competition matters there. But I was talking more about what kind of competition do you have in your own program. I think that's where winning starts. Do you have a competitive type program where every single guy, all 101 you have right now, soon to be 85, does every single guy care about winning more than anything else in the entire world? That's what competition is to me. Are they going to go out and put their heart and soul on the line every single day at practice because, damn it, they want to be on the field and they want to go win football games on Saturday? Are they that competitive? That's where I think winning starts. It's the type of guys you bring in and the type of culture that you start at your program.
You're fostering. It's a mentality. It's a standard. Let's hear from Coach Dvorak, the linebackers coach. And this really stuck out to me because he was asked to describe Tony White's defense. And his job is edge and linebackers and, quite frankly, to get after the quarterback. And he's got an interesting linebacker room. But let's get to the base point here about Mr. White's D.
Chaos. It's structured in a way that we can get to a lot of different fronts. We can get a lot of different coverages in many different ways of doing it. So it's hard to describe because we could do a lot of things, but it could also look the same. So it's been really cool to learn the system with Coach White and see how we could win on defense.
Well, I mean, the chaos is there, and you can make it look a lot of different ways as long as the kids get it and can play fast. That's the offense's problem if they're confused, Elijah, right? And I think that's it. And what I also like here is the ability to get your matchups. You've seen other teams do it to Nebraska the last few years where they stick their defensive stud over the weak part of the offensive line, and Epinesa goes to town. Just one example.
Sorry, I can't get over what you said leading into that.
I know. And I just kind of went.
We're talking Mr. White's D.
Yeah, Mr. White, Coach White, and that defense.
Defense. That's what we're talking about. Yep.
All right, let's get to romper room. Yeah, I didn't mean to phrase it that way. It just happened. It just happened. Okay,
I'm gonna pull that. That's that quote's not gonna die.
No, let's just get rid of the tape. Moving forward, let's talk a little bit more here with Dvorak, specifically Coach Sherman. I shouldn't say Coach Sherman, but Sherman and Borders. Those additions, what they're going to mean to that linebacker room.
Yep, they've been in my room and trying to find the right space for all those guys. but they've been a pleasure to work with.
What do you think in particular about those two and just the experience that they have coming from the programs that they were in, what they can add here?
Nothing in particular to them too. I think everyone within the room has been doing a really good job. They're tough kids, they work hard, they're competitive, and that's what we're looking for within the room.
So let's hear a little bit from Coach Raiola and cut 14 here. Thoughts on the offensive line last year. Get a little bit of an assessment here and Coach Donnie's take.
I thought as the year went on, they improved every game, which is, being an offensive lineman is such a process, right? You got a new coach, new techniques, new calls, all those different things. And as you watch the season go on, they got better and better and better. And that's all we're focused on. We're focused on today, focusing on our process of improvement. And that's what we're going forward with.
So let's talk about Turner Corcoran and just how interchangeable he is. He needs to be on the line. Where does he best fit? Where can he help out? And where can he thrive?
Yeah, he's one of those guys you can play outside at tackle or guard, right? So it's always good, but we work all those guys in different spots just so, they're preparing, who knows, right? Last year was pretty interesting, right? So we just work them, on the left side, right side, so they're working on different stances, different types of movements. The left side obviously is different than the right side a little bit, right? It's great having guys like that, hey, something happens, he can move here or there. And that's what you try to build, right? Every guy should be, in that. Now center's a little different, but, every guy should be able to play tackle, guard, or center, right? So that's what, when we go through this process, we're working them all over the line.
So Scott, not necessarily inked in at center, to Evan's point, and Babbers talked about it last hour, that, he's spent some time at tackle.
Yeah, we're working through that right now. Turner, we can throw Bryce over there. We can throw other guys out there, right? So Nuri could go out there. We're still figuring all those things out. There's nothing set in stone right now. So, yeah, we're just seeing who the best five is right now, and we'll figure that out once we get our pads on and all those things. But, we're just focusing on the work that we're doing right now.
Such a big time right now for that offensive line.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you, it's Hail Varsity Radio, presented by Currency. Time for a Jock Doc Wednesday. Nebraska Orthopedic Center. Dr. Brandon Seifert with us. He's got his snow goggles on, and I think he's gripping that steering wheel. He's navigating safely. Dr. Brandon, how you doing?
I'm great, Chris. How are you guys doing?
Good. Do we need to send a sled and some Huskies out for you?
We might need those in a few more miles here.
Maybe a dog with a barrel of brandy around its neck.
Yeah. We'll send you a St. Bernard.
There it is.
Get you some medicine. Something needs to numb that wrist for Giannis. My goodness, that didn't look good.
No, it was pretty brutal, wasn't it?
Yep, Giannis is our topic of all places to ding yourself. That so-called atrocity of an all-star game is where he got hurt, just 2 points. Giannis out with sprained ligaments in that right wrist. Dr. Brandon, let's get into the different levels of pain and sprain that can happen with the Greek Freak.
Yeah, absolutely. So as you think about this, it's a little tough kind of figuring out which side of the wrist they're talking about. A wrist sprain is pretty broad. There's obviously some different pathways you can go down with different types of wrist sprains. But as you look at this, kind of the three main ones that we typically will see more so on the outside of the wrist. If you kind of feel a little bump on the outside of your wrist, that's called the ulnar styloid. There's a big kind of triangular-shaped ligament that sits over that outside of the wrist called the triangular fibrocartilage complex, or TFCC. That's a pretty commonly one that's injured. We see that a lot in, like, our baseball players, our hockey athletes. We do a lot of basically velocity through that area with just swinging the stick or the bat. See it some with certain types of twisting injuries. No doubt with the injury he had, the mechanism he had, he could have sustained some trauma to that area. Then there's kind of your generic, what we call kind of dorsal wrist sprain, which is basically the tissue that covers the back of the wrist called the capsule, and that's on the back side of your wrist. And that's where predominantly most of these occur, and no doubt he's got at least a component of that. And then you also can have a component where you sprain more on the thumb side, or what we call the radial side of the wrist, and there's some other thicker ligamentous complexes in that area you can sprain. The biggest thing is with these, if somebody's having pain in particular on the thumb side of the wrist, we call it the radial side, there's a small bone just off kind of the tip of the wrist there called the scaphoid, and that's something that you always want to check out and make sure you image well if somebody's having pain in that area. These are ones that can be, missed as kind of the chronic wrist sprain, if you will, that never gets x-rayed. They just kind of treat it as a sprain, put some tape on it, let them keep playing, and then a couple months goes by, it keeps hurting, and they finally get x-rays, and you find that the patient has a fracture in the scaphoid. That's what you obviously want to try to avoid. And so those are kind of the main areas. Some really high-level trauma, and they're not really talking about this with him, is between that scaphoid bone we just talked about, there's another little bone next to that called the lunate, and there's a really thick ligament that basically attaches between those two. It takes really high-level trauma to tear that, but that puts you in kind of a whole other category and start talking surgery when you start talking about that level of trauma.
Dr. Brandon, I follow an Instagram page that showcases some of the worst skateboarding mishaps and crashes that you can imagine. And the number one thing I've learned from that page is if you're going to be going down, don't put that arm and that wrist out to brace yourself, because it's only going to lead to a broken wrist or something of the like. So are we lucky here that this is just a sprained wrist for Giannis and this might only be a couple weeks out, or could this lead to some lingering issues for him in his game?
Yeah, it can be twofold. One, most of the time these turn the corner pretty quick. And especially somebody's a basketball player, it should turn the corner pretty quick and do well. Obviously, you can go the other way if it's a little higher grade than what maybe they're alluding to, or maybe a little higher grade than, say, what the imaging shows. Then it could become more lingering. Obviously, if you fall, you kind of retweak this. If somebody grabs onto this, kind of torques it while he's playing, that could set him back. But I think in his scenario, I think this would be a reasonably quick return for him.
Dr. Brandon Seifert's with us, Nebraska Orthopedic Center at Jock Doc Wednesday. Giannis, the Greek freak, our topic, and that wrist sprain, the sprained ligaments. Dr. Brandon, what are some of the treatments that are going on right now? What is the medical staff, what are the Bucks doing right now to get him back sooner rather than later without rushing it?
Yeah, and so you're obviously going to utilize some anti-inflammatories, some ice, kind of that classic Rice protocol initially. With these, we always want to work hard to make sure we're not missing out on range of motion, so they'll start some gentle range of motion with him. Then they'll start to do kind of some gradual strengthening. They might even try just for some immobilization and like a Velcro splint, or even a more of a plaster type of splint for him, just to give this some soft tissue rest, particularly when he's sleeping at night. Those are things that they might utilize. And then as you kind of progress over the next maybe 7 to 10 days, they start to get more aggressive with the PT side of it in terms of some strengthening and some band work.
So he's back, let's say, in X number of weeks. Ballpark it for me if you could, best case, worst case. And then what's the re-injury rate with this?
Yeah, I think he's probably back, and I would give you kind of a window of 2 to 4 weeks. I think is reasonable, just kind of based on the reports they're giving to us. Re-injury risk on this, reasonably low in basketball. Obviously, the thing you worry about with these is somebody who's doing a really repetitive, like, again, baseball is one of those, or golf, where you're basically swinging repetitively. Doing more basketball, I think you can protect us a little bit more as a player. And so I think his re-injury risk is a lot lower than, say, those other sports. Obviously, it's not zero if he falls on this just right or somebody grabs onto it, a rebound or something, that can make that a lot worse. But I think he's got a pretty high, good prognosis coming back early.
Is this something he can re-injure it by going up for a dunk or even going up for a block with the amount of force that's coming in, either way?
Yeah, great question, Chris. I would say more on the block side. At least with the dunk side, most of the time you're going to be able to control that a little bit better. On the block side, obviously the opponent's moving, you're moving along with him. Probably more at risk of tweaking it more with a block shot type of scenario.
So, Dr. Brandon, is there going to be any protection that's available for Giannis in-game here with wrist braces? Because I think of the sport of basketball and how important that wrist is for shooting, for layups, for just ball handling. A lot of the game is using your wrist, and I'm wondering, is it possible to put on some sort of wrist brace for Giannis as he returns from injury to lower that re-injury risk?
Yeah, the hard part is, if you're talking, shooting hand, it's hard. Obviously, trying to put something rigid on there is not going to work. You could try something as simple as one of those little elastic sleeves that could go over. I've seen some folks use that. Honestly, the thing they'll probably use that we see the most, the more kind of some type of fancy taping technique is probably what they'll utilize for him. That'd give him probably the most freedom in terms of range of motion.
They're going to have to use a whole roll on that wrist?
They might early on.
It's a big wrist to tape up. Dr. Brandon Seifert is with us. Oh, he's huge, man. He's awesome to watch. Dr. Brandon Seifert with us. Nebraska Orthopedic Center at Jock Doc Wednesday. Giannis and his wrist sprain, our topic. Dr. Brandon, we'll get caught up again soon. Thanks for a few minutes today.
All right, fellas. Take care.
And the St. Bernard is en route, Dr. Brandon. Should be there in roughly 2 hours.
So that's what he's carrying. Got some bourbon in there.
Elijah drank half. There we go. You did. It's icy in Lincoln, where we're broadcasting from. We hope you're safe wherever you hear us, and be careful out and about with this winter storm weather, this winter storm warning in a lot of the different parts of the state where you're hearing us, so be careful. We'll wind down a Wednesday. It's Hail Varsity, and we're presented by Currency.
And now,
back to Hail Varsity Radio.
One final time, a Wednesday podcast available for you if you just caught part of us or want to catch more of us on your time. Spotify, iTunes, Google Play with Hail Varsity Radio. Full segment, different segments, the full show, whatever you want is yours. We love a feedback and you to subscribe. It doesn't cost you anything, and check out all the other family of Hurrdat podcasts there. All sorts of goodness to choose from. Be sure to get the magazine and digital subscription too with Hail Varsity, hailvarsity.com/offer. New issue is out. It is flat out incredible. Gets you a good spring preview of baseball and softball and plenty of spring football thoughts as well. We talked about Colorado and the fact that Colorado State sold out. We just got our hotels booked for Boulder. Ooh. Excited for that.
Did you get me a room?
Kinda.
That's not a good answer.
I don't know that I have a bed. I have a room. All right? I have a room.
You don't know if you have a bed, though?
I don't know if it's one or two. Doesn't matter. Give me a pillow and a blankie and make sure there's no bugs crawling around.
I keep a sleeping bag in my car at all times for times just like this. So you never know. You never know what the situation's going to be like. So I always have a sleeping bag and actually a pack of matches with me at all times in my car, just in case.
What are the matches for?
Well, look at a day like today. Look at a day like today. What if I get stuck out on the roads and
you got to set your car seat on fire?
Well, I was going to say I'm at a place where, there's no cell phone reception. I can't call 911, so therefore I'm stuck. I'm on my own. I'm going to be stuck out in the elements for the night. I got a sleeping bag, which is certified down to 20 degrees.
Have you ever had to make a campfire?
Have you ever had to make a campfire? Yeah.
Without
no.
Without matches?
I've done it with a flint. That's not too bad.
Okay.
If you have the flint, it's really easy. Like if you're talking like rubbing sticks together.
You've not had to go full Tom Hanks.
No, I've never had to rub sticks together. I've never had to pull that one. I don't think I ever could.
I couldn't, man. I'd be done.
Well, I used to watch enough Bear Grylls and Les Stroud back in the day. At least I have somewhat of an idea of how I'd go about it. But I don't think I'd be successful.
Pray for a lightning strike. Brian chimes in and said, after going to Boulder for Husker games in the 80s, while a student at UNL, I just assumed flinging whiskey bottles and other inanimate objects at visiting fans required at the 100 course level at CU. Well, cousin Jason got hit by Jack Daniels bottle. He wasn't flinging it at anybody. It ended in tear gas. It ended in stitches for him. That's all right. He missed the tear gas because he got knocked out. Well, now, he may have been mouthing off. I don't know.
Well, I feel like anyone that sat in the UNL student section has been hit with a fireball shooter. That's a little different than a Jack Daniels bottle, but fireball shooter, it's very annoying.
Well, at least it's empty.
For the most part.
Well,
sometimes you'll get one thrown your way from someone down the row that's full, and that's a good day for you if you're in the student section.
That's a great day. Well played.
Allegedly, I should say add allegedly if there's anyone from the university listening.
And then, of course, Creighton last night won a tough one against Marquette. Big road win for Marquette. Great effort by Creighton. But I know that there were some things hurled towards Marquette as they went off the floor, and Coach Mack addressed that immediately. And that, Creighton fans get beat up a lot by Nebraska fans, just verbally, and that's not Creighton-like. I know too many Creighton fans that are good dudes that aren't like that. A lot of frustration, a chance to be in first in the Big East.
Well, did you hear about the lemon situation in the XFL this weekend? The fans got their beer snake taken. They put all the cups together into a large beer snake. The stadium confiscated it, and somehow someone had a large quantity of lemons. They started passing around. Everyone started throwing lemons on the field because they were mad about their beer snake being taken.
It's not quite the Orange Bowl, is it? Tomorrow, Gary Barnett with us, Brandon Vogel. Talk to you at 4 on Hail Varsity. Thank you.